Now, hello, welcome along to another edition of Isolation Interviews for Hospital Radio Reading and for my YouTube channel. I am super excited to be joined by an acting icon in the form of Julie Graham. Julie, thank you for joining me. How are you?
Oh, I'm very well, thank you. That's very sweet of you to call me an acting icon.
I mean, I say you've had the pleasure of doing some really iconic shows and to do so much variety, and we will of course talk about some of those projects. But at the moment, you're in proper sort of promotion mode. So tell us a bit about your latest
Yes.
project, which is This City Is Ours, because it looks amazing.
Hmm.
So how did it come about? Tell us a bit about it.
Well, I mean, it sort of came about like any other job. I mean, you're put up for stuff. I mean, sometimes you're asked to do jobs, and other times, you've got to audition and have meetings with people and everything. So that was one of those jobs that came along, and they sent me the script, and I immediately fell in love with the script, not only the script, but the character. So yeah, so it was just something I wanted to do immediately, and so then I had to kind of like brush up on my Scouse accent, which is a little bit daunting because the thing is, it's with Liverpool. I don't know. It's something about Liverpool. Um, you really want to get it right because you know that if you don't get it right, you'll probably get a roasting, from the people that live there, and quite rightly so. But I got a really good friend called Jonathan Harvey, who's a writer, and he is from Liverpool, obviously, and he kind of, I went through the script with him before I had my meeting, and he sort of helped me, gave me a bit of voice coaching. So yeah, so that was it. I mean, I kind of read for it, and then they offered me the job, and I was absolutely delighted because I think it's a wonderful project.
So tell us a little bit about the premise. Obviously, don't give any sort of massive spoilers away, but tell us a bit about what
Okay.
people can expect from the show.
Well, I mean, it's a crime drama. But it's got a little bit of a difference in that at the center of it. So it sort of centers around this family, the Phelan family, who are Ronnie played by Sean Bean. I play Elaine, who's his wife. And yeah, it's an organized crime family set in Liverpool. The family deals with all the drugs and all that sort of stuff. And then, but at the same time, you've got this kind of love story running through the the series, which kind of I think makes it a little bit different from the usual kind of gangster. The criminals are actually the kind of, I suppose, the anti-heroes in a way. But Michael is Ronnie's right-hand man, and he has come to a crossroads in his life where he's fallen in love for the first time. They've decided to try for a baby through IVF, and he's kind of reevaluating his life and what he wants to do, and what his moral compass is, which I think is a really interesting thing to examine. You don't often see that kind of reflective nature in these shows. And at the same time, I'm trying to persuade my husband to step back from kind of running the business, and they've got a house in Spain, and she kind of wants a bit of a quiet life. So then it becomes a case of who is going to take over the family business, who's going to take over the business. Ronnie wants his right hand man, Michael, who's been with him, for the whole time. And Elaine is very keen on her son, Jamie, taking over. She wants to kind of keep it in the immediate family. And so then there's a basically that's where the drama comes in of the who's going to succeed, who's going to take over. The problem with Jamie is that Jamie is a wild card. He's a loose cannon. He's got a temper. He's not really been involved in the family business, so he doesn't really know how it's run. So he's quite immature. So that causes a lot of uh sort of, it goes down quite bad roads when Jamie tries to get involved, put it that way. So that's the kind of premise of the show.
And I mean, an amazing, cast. I mean, obviously yourself, Sean Bean, who's fantastic. The likes of
Yeah.
Laura Aikman. I mean, you must have felt so lucky with who you got to work with on this project.
Oh yeah. I mean, the cast are incredible. I mean, you've got. I think the other one of the other reasons I love the show was because it's got crime, not crime dramas, but things about the kind of mafia or sort of organized crime. They tend to kind of be quite light on the kind of female roles in it. And Stephen Butchard is just such a great writer, and he so there's a lot of great parts in it for women, which I think makes it stand out as well. So you've got Saoirse Monica Jackson, the brilliant Saoirse Monica Jackson, who's from Derry Girls, of course, we all know her from. So she's in almost like in a completely different role. She's fantastic. The young actress called Darcy Shaw, who's from Liverpool, who's a rising star. And then Hannah Onslow, who plays Michael's partner, who's trying for a baby. Laura Aikman, like you said, she's just incredible. So you've got all these wonderful, wonderful kind of female parts, and Leanne Best as well, as she plays Hannah's mum in it, and that's a whole kind of side plot where Hannah's mum's in prison and you don't really know why, and so they have all these quite emotional scenes together. So it's got kind of lots and lots of subplots, but the cast, second to none, are absolutely incredible, and I loved working with every single one of them. I mean, my son, Jack McMullen, who plays my son, by the end I really felt like he was my son. We ended up kind of having this really actually quite close mother-son relationship. And James Nelson Joyce, obviously, he's just such a huge star. I mean, he's incredible. So yeah, it's exciting to see kind of what's going to happen to it, and hopefully we can do a second series and go back and tell some more of that story.
Because I imagine when you first take on a role like this, do you know who else is going to be in it, or is that something that you only find out once you sort of accept the role?
I mean, it depends. I knew that Sean Bean was attached to it, and actually, I knew James Nelson Joyce was attached to it as well, but I didn't really know who else was in it. So yeah, sometimes you know, and sometimes you don't, and obviously that can inform sometimes whether you want to do a job or not, because of the caliber of the actors. But certainly with yeah, I think when you find out that Sean Bean's attached to anything, you kind of jump at the chance, because he's just such an icon.
And I mean, it must be quite nice as well, because obviously you do a program, a project like this, and then obviously you'll go away, do other things, and then you get to come back together when you're sort of doing the press and the promo. And I know you're sort of out there at the moment doing a lot. So is it quite nice to kind of get back together again after a bit of a break?
Oh yeah, that's always the best bit. It's always the best fun, because yeah, like you say, people have busy lives and they go off and do other things. But yeah, it was an absolute joy to come back together and see all those people again, because they're just, yeah, we had a lot of fun. And also we were filming for the first 5 weeks, we were filming in Spain, and we were all staying in the same place with the cast and the crew. We were all together. And usually when you film, everybody goes off at the end of the day and they do their own thing, and people have families and busy lives and stuff. But because we were all essentially bundled together, it was very sociable, and we bonded really quickly, because we were all kind of going out for dinner and hanging out and doing stuff at the weekends, and people's various partners and girlfriends, boyfriends, wives would come out. And so it was a very sociable show. But especially, yeah, the Spain leg of it was definitely very enjoyable.
I mean, I imagine when you get to, as part of your career and your work, you get to go and travel to these far-flung, countries and do amazing things. Is that something you quite like? Because obviously, other projects you've worked on that, we'll talk a bit more, but like Death in Paradise, Benidorm, those sorts of programs where you get to go abroad. Do you look forward to that sort of thing?
Yeah, because I feel like I've earned my stripes in that regard, because I think I spent most of my career stuck in muddy car parks in places like Leeds and Glasgow and Manchester and Liverpool. So I felt like when I went out and did Death in Paradise, and then when I went out and did Benidorm, I was like, okay, this is payback. This is for all those years that I spent in in kind of, yeah, rainy car parks. Suddenly I'm in the Caribbean or in Spain. So I felt like I'd earned it.
Now let's go back. Where did your love of acting, performing? Can you remember where that came from? Do you remember how you became interested in the world of entertainment?
Well, I mean, my mum was an actress, and so I was kind of immersed in that world when I was a child. I mean, she was a single parent, and we came from she was one of the kind of first people in our family to kind of be involved in the arts. Um, I would go on to, she didn't do a lot of TV. She did some TV, but she mostly did theatre and things like panto and summer season. She was a variety actor. She was singer, dancer, kind of comedian. And so I guess I was surrounded by that world, but it wasn't really something that I kind of ever thought of doing. It wasn't until I started going to the theatre when I was a teenager, and we had an amazing English teacher called Sean Hemphill, who used to, there's always one teacher, isn't there, who's kind of inspirational. And he used to take us to the theatre in Glasgow, to the Citizens. And the Citizens Theatre always put on these amazing, beautiful, kind of opulent productions. And I remember seeing a play called Mary Stuart, and it's about the fictional meeting of Mary, Queen of Scots, and Elizabeth I. Of course, they never met, but it fictionalized this meeting, and it was just, I remember the set and the costumes and they had this kind of machine on stage that was whirling all these leaves, and it was magical. And I thought, oh yeah, I would like to do that. I want to be part of that world of storytelling and everything. And then I also had an amazing drama teacher called Leslie Greer, who, in those days, we were lucky enough to have an actual drama department in our secondary school. Of course, they don't exist anymore. It's such a shame, but well, certainly not in state schools. And so we were lucky to have a kind of separate drama department. So I always did plays at school and musicals and stuff. And I guess that I think that was where it came from, and I wanted to go to drama school, but circumstances kind of beyond my control steered me away from that. And I ended up getting my equity card with a theatre company and then working with them. And so that was my kind of baptism of fire, just going into the theatre and actually doing the job.
And do you remember that first time when you stood on a stage, performed in front of an audience, and do you remember the response? Do you remember kind of how you felt through that?
Oh yeah, you never forget it. It's visceral. I mean, it's absolutely terrifying. Every time you do it, you think, why am I doing this? It's so scary. And that never goes away. And I think if it does go away, you shouldn't do it anymore, because it's, nerves are good and that sort of excitement. But yes, for sure, definitely. My first play was with a theatre company called Borderline, which were a touring company based in Ayrshire. And we did a play called Round the Twist, and it was about it was about children who were forced to work in the mills, and when in the bad old days when children were forced to work in factories and stuff. So, but yes, I'll never forget it. I'll never forget the first time and standing on the stage in the audience and the absolute buzz that you get, because you get such an energy from an audience. I mean, that's why sometimes you get actors saying, and they shouldn't say it, but sometimes they go, oh, that audience, they were terrible. Having a bad show, blame the audience. But yeah, you definitely get a kind of energy and a buzz, from theatre that you don't get on a TV set or a film set.
And obviously, the fact you've been able to do both, film and TV, is there one that you prefer? Do you love the fact you can go between the two? I mean, it's probably hard to choose, but
Well, I haven't done theatre for a long time. I mean, I used to like doing a play and then doing a TV, and kind of going backwards and forwards between them. That was always great. But then I had kids, and it made it more difficult to kind of go away. I mean, because you can't just work in London. I mean, I would get offered plays, a lot of plays in Scotland, and up in places like Manchester, but I could never go because my children were little, and you can't really take them once they're at school. You can't take them with you. So I haven't done theatre for a long time, but now that they're all grown up and they've left home, then maybe I'll go back. I'd love to go back to it for sure. But I wouldn't say I prefer one to the other. I mean, they have their different. I suppose they have their different draws. As I say, you can't beat a live performance because it's just so electrifying and it's different every night. Whereas, with a sort of, television show or film, you've kind of got to try and get it right. You don't really get a second chance. So at least the theatre, if you have a bad night one night, you can go back and try and try and do it better the next night.
I mean, talking about traveling, one show which you did, which you didn't have to do any traveling for, was
Mm.
during lockdown when you did Dunbreedon.
Oh
And
yeah.
I mention this because I've spoken to, Tamsin, Denise, Angela in the past, and they're all delightful. To do that project must have been quite a strange one because you have to do everything yourselves because obviously
Mm.
we were all stuck in lockdown.
Yes.
I imagine that was an amazing learning curve for you.
Well, it was. I mean, I had this idea. I had this idea ages ago about, because obviously I was going through menopause, and I thought, nobody was talking about it at the time. I mean, everyone's talking about menopause now, and it's great. It's the debate has opened up a great deal, but at the time, nobody was talking about it, and I just thought, we all is this some sort of kind of collective silence that. Um, so I had been writing something about it, and I'd been trying to develop it and kind of get it made and everything. And of course, then we all went into lockdown, and as you know, and so my friend Andrew Green, who's a producer, he said to me, why don't we try and do it in lockdown? I thought he was mad. And when he kind of, came to me with the idea, I was like, no, no, you're absolutely crazy. But the more he talked about it and the more crazy it was, I thought, yeah, let's do it. So, um, so he sent cameras to everyone's houses, and we had lights, and it was all shot on iPhones. Um, and then it became this kind of hit, I mean, on YouTube. So we would do an episode every week. And I have to say, looking back on it, it was a steep learning curve because we had to do everything. But it kept me sane. And I know for the other women involved in it as well, I think it kept them, on the right side of sanity too, because like, as you know, we couldn't work, we couldn't do anything. And so it was wonderful. Kind of, it was incredibly creative, and yeah, I learned a lot about, especially about kind of, I have it gave me a renewed respect, because I've always respected people behind the camera, but it gave me a renewed respect of just how hard it is and how hard they work. And also I thought, I'm never going to moan about anything again, because because it was quite stressful. I mean, my husband and I fell out quite a lot over things like, he would say, I don't know, maybe you could do that a little bit better. I'd be like, what? Don't tell me how to act. He was like, no, okay, I'm just trying to be, I'm just trying to kind of, be helpful. Well, you're not being helpful. So, yeah, I think everyone fell out with their partners. We were all just sensitive little souls at the end of the day. So, but it was wonderful to do, and it gave me great experience about having to come up with a different script every week as well. And yeah, so it was a wonderful project. I would love to kind of get it made properly, but we'll see.
Fingers crossed, that would be great.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you've done so much over your career, but for you, is there like a career highlight? Is there something that you're most proud of that you've had the pleasure of working on?
Um, to be honest, not really. I don't, you're only as good as your last job, to be honest. I mean, there's so many wonderful jobs that I've done and wonderful people I've worked with. I mean, I suppose William and Mary for me it was a kind of pivotal job, in that I was kind of, it was the first time I'd kind of played a leading role on television. Um, and that came about because I suppose At Home with the Braithwaites was a thing that kind of gave me a visibility that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Um, so I suppose those two jobs were kind of highlights in terms of moving, kind of nudging my career on, and leading to other work. Both brilliant jobs, both such different roles. I mean, you couldn't get any different between Megan and Mary, for sure. So I suppose that, but I mean, every job is I decided a long time ago that I wasn't going to do any jobs that I wasn't completely 100% committed to. I think if you do a job, you've got to be 100% committed to it and do it with good grace. And once you do it, just kind of dedicate yourself to that. So yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky. I've had lots of great roles, to be honest.
And is there anything that you haven't done that you would love to do? Is there a dream? Is there someone you'd love to work with that you've never had the chance to? What would you love to see happen in the future?
Oh, well, I have a list actually. I'd love to do a horror film. I would absolutely love to do one. I would love to do more comedy. To be honest, I don't do a lot of comedy, so I would like to do more. Um, I mean, there's so many people I'd love to work with. I mean, um, yeah, I mean, I can't think of anyone offhand, but I would love to do a play on Broadway. Um, yeah, do you know, I'd rather do a play on Broadway than do a Hollywood film. I mean, obviously, if a Hollywood film comes my way, then I'm not going to say no. But so yeah, there's little kind of tiny little bucket list things, but yeah, definitely, I'd definitely like to do more comedy. Yeah.
I mean, that's I say we were mentioning it before. The great thing is you've had that real diversity, and I mean, I imagine when you're an actor and you get that variety, because you do get some people who kind of get a bit pigeonholed in one area, which obviously is not
Mm.
great. Do you love the fact that you can go about anything you want, really? You've kind of got that freedom to do, maybe if, oh, I fancy doing a bit of something a bit more funny, you can find that. You're quite, I'll say
Mm.
you're quite a lucky individual. Are you quite proud of that you have that choice?
Yeah, I mean, variety is the spice of life, right? I mean, you've got, it's. I think if you kind of stick to doing one thing, it could get a bit boring. But yeah. So I do feel like I've had quite a kind of varied types of roles, and I always try to mix it up. I mean, the thing is, sometimes you just don't have a choice. It's whatever you're offered or whatever you're going up for, and I would love to be in the position where I could sort of pick and choose, but that's I don't have that luxury. I mean, sometimes you've just got to kind of sometimes suck it up and do jobs to pay the bills, you know. But I do like to have a kind of try to mix it up a bit, because I think that if you can allow yourself to kind of be in a safe space and just kind of not push yourself and think, oh well, I'm not going to do that because I'm a little bit scared of it, or I don't think I can do it. I think you've got to jump in. That's the wonderful thing about being kind of involved in this business and being an actor, is that I think it sort of keeps you young. And I think if you're not if you don't have enthusiasm for it anymore, and as I say, like you're not going to kind of push yourself a little bit, then it's probably time to get out and do something else, I would have thought.
And I mean to say you probably get to meet so many amazing, talented up and coming actors. And is it quite nice to be able to, offload advice and kind of help them where you can? And I suppose the other thing I was going to say is kind of if you could give yourself your younger version a bit of advice, what sort of advice would you give to up and coming actors or to your younger self?
Well, I think you've got to. I mean, I would certainly say to younger actors, it was different when I was younger. People, you were either an actor or a writer or a director, or you were kind of expected to stay in your lane to a certain extent. And I would say to younger actors, I always say it to them, is that do everything, write, direct, make your own stuff, make your own opportunities. And it's much easier to do that now. So you've got several platforms where you can do that. And there's much, much more of a variety of outlets where you can kind of get your work done, and people will take you seriously with that. So I always say, if you're not working, create your own work. I think that's what we did to a certain extent with Done Breeding. We just went, okay, we can't work. Let's make our own. So I would definitely say that. I mean, I would never give any unsolicited advice to a young actor, but I always kind of try to make myself available on a set or a theatre and say, you know, if you've got any issues or any problems, then, you know, absolutely feel free to come and talk to me, and I will do anything that I can to help or support you. So and because I always had, when I was much younger, I always had older actresses who I looked up to who kind of gave me great advice, and um, you know, just that kind of almost in a maternal way. But I absolutely love working with young actors, and I'm really lucky again in this job where you can kind of you work with all kind of generations of people, and they, I don't know, I think they keep you young and they keep you grounded, and um, so yeah, and I think that, you know, certainly times have changed on, you know, film sets could be quite male dominated when I was younger as well, and there could be a bit of a kind of hierarchy, and sometimes, you know, just a kind of male dominance in on sets, and that doesn't tend to happen anymore. It's not 100% the way it should be, but it's definitely heading that way, and so yeah.
And I mean to say, at the moment, we are getting to see a lot of amazing female-led, female-driven projects, and I think that's one thing that I mean, I see that the industry is moving in the right direction. You must be super
Mm.
excited for what the future holds in terms of kind of what people can bring.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think some of my favorite projects are definitely female led. I mean, when I did the Hardacres last year, it was a completely female creative team, and that was just a joy. There's something about, there's a different energy when it's a kind of all female creative team. There's no doubt about it. I feel like it's more collaborative. I feel like it's less, you know, that you're kind of, you're not afraid to kind of, you know, pitch in ideas and all that sort of stuff, and I feel like, you know, they're much more open to, you know, people kind of having ideas and being taken seriously. So there's definitely a different atmosphere on set for sure. I don't know, I can't put my finger on it, and it's not always like that, and it's not always perfect, but I think you know, I think for young women in the industry now, it's that thing of, you know, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I think with certainly in the industry now, you can see women in all sorts of positions of authority and power. I don't like to use that word, but, you know, who are, you know, kind of calling the shots to a certain extent. They're creative, and they're um, I think that's incredibly inspiring for younger actresses, and for me as well, for sure. You know, I think it's a great thing.
Now we must talk a bit about obviously the NHS, and obviously we're going out on Hospital Radio Reading, and for you,
Yes.
what would you like to say to the amazing NHS staff and the NHS kind of in general, and then also what would you like to say to any of the patients who are listening, maybe not having the best of times at the moment? What would you love to say to them?
Well, certainly to the staff, the NHS. I mean, I just think they should all be. I think they should all be given a huge pay rise. First of all, I can't believe that they do the job for the money that they're paid, and I always feel like I just kind of want to win the lottery so I can give everybody a pay rise. If I was a billionaire, if I was Jeff Bezos, I'd give them all, you know. But also just to say a huge thank you and so much respect for everything that they did before the pandemic as well, but especially during the pandemic. I feel like they're just not thanked enough and they're not appreciated enough. So I would like to just personally say a huge thank you to them. And to anybody listening to who's in hospital, I just want to send them so much love, and I want them to get better and be well and try and hang on in there and keep their chin up. And things will. There's one sure thing in life is that nothing will ever stay the same. So things will get better, and I just wish everybody well. Really, I mean, you know, and send everyone my love, and try and find something in your day that, you know, makes you a little bit more happy or cheers you up. You know, whether I don't know what that is, but you know, just I think everyone can find something in their day, a kind of positive, you know, it's to kind of look on the bright side and see the positives there. There's always one thing. And I suppose the kindness of, you know, the nurses and doctors that work there is one of the big things that keeps us all going.
And I say, while they've got a bit of spare time, the perfect chance to obviously binge This City Is Ours, which is obviously on BBC iPlayer. Um,
Absolutely. Binge away. It's very
exactly.
bingeable.
Now, I just want to say, Julie, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for giving up your time. Of course, keep safe, and you are welcome back anytime.
Oh, not at all. It was an absolute pleasure. I think what you're doing is absolutely brilliant. I take my hat off to you.
Oh, thank
And
you.
I think it's a wonderful thing that you do. You're just such an amazing person. And I've listened to a lot of the interviews, and I think they're just absolutely lovely. And I have so much respect for you for doing that. And it was a pleasure to talk to you.